Good evening. On Channel 1 Ostankiно, the evening overview of the main events of the day. Today, the Federative Council instructed Vladimir Shumeyko to sign the agreement on civil accord. The question of the new Prosecutor General remains open. 6 Russian-Israeli intergovernmental agreements were concluded in Moscow. Russia expresses a desire to occupy a more active position in the process of Middle East regularization. Pavel Gorachov stated that the problem of the Black Sea Fleet must be resolved by a special two-sided government commission headed by the premiers of Russia and Ukraine. The new Prime Minister of Japan has been elected. He is the 58-year-old Tsutomu Hata. The conclusion of the pre-election campaign in South Africa was darkened by a series of explosions in Johannesburg, as a result of which at least 19 people have died. The Federative Council today examined the project of the agreement on civil accord. On the eve, the President of Russia sent to Vladimir Shumeyko a note in which he expressed hope that the Federative Council would be able to prepare the text of the agreement for signing. The official representative of the President, the co-chairman of the Commons Chamber, the academician Boris Topornin, informed the deputies that the document reflects a collective labor and was adopted by the majority of members of the task force who had prepared it. Today was the 100th day since the beginning of the work of the Federal Assembly, and today was the 5th session of the Higher Chamber. Instructing Vladimir Shumeyko to sign the agreement on civil accord, the members of the Federative Council later examined the question of the Prosecutor General of Russia. Only 4 deputies during secret balloting were against the releasing of Alexei Kazanik from the post of Prosecutor General. Of the 130 participants of the vote, 121 deputies were for the resignation of Kazanik. In the afternoon, on the instructions of the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, the head of the government, Viktor Chernomyrdin, presented to the Federative Council the new candidacy for the post of Prosecutor General, Alexei Ilyushenko. According to the head of government, Ilyushenko fully answers all the requirements necessary for the post. Alexei Ilyushenko answered the multitude of questions of the members of the Higher Chamber, and later the secret ballot was held. These are the results. 65 deputies were for the candidacy of Alexei Ilyushenko, 72 against. Therefore, Ilyushenko was not confirmed in the post, and the question on the Prosecutor General of Russia remains open. After the meeting of the President of the Russian Federation with leaders of the factions of the State Duma and heads of the Russian regions, the project of the agreement on civil accord in principle has been corrected. This was stated to correspondents of TASS and Interfax by the head of the administration of the President, Sergei Filatov. Excluded from the document is the ban on amending the Constitution, which could destabilize the situation in society. In the text now it says the sides are preparing an amendment to the Constitution on a coordinated basis. Also, the task force on preparing the agreement considers the desires of regional leaders and excludes from the text of the document the thesis on the need on aligning constitutions of the Republic with the Constitution of Russia. This aim will be resolved beyond the framework of the agreement, said Sergei Filatov. Considered are also the demands of leaders of the Agrarian Party, Mikhail Lapshin, and leader of the Communist Party of Russia, Gennady Zyuganov. In the agreement, the sides will contribute to the decrease in differentiation in revenues of citizens. The co-chairman of the Movement of Democratic Russia, Lev Ponomarev and Gleb Yakunin, appealed today with an open letter to Boris Yeltsin, proposing to postpone the 28th of April signing date for the agreement on social accord. Their position, the leaders of Democratic Russia explained by the publication in Izvestia the article of Vladimir Zhirinovsky, in which they see expansionist tendencies and anti-constitutional appeals. Against social accord with the leader of the Liberal Democrats, the leaders of the Democratic Russia feel that Vladimir Zhirinovsky must either publicly renounce the anti-constitutional appeals in the article or must not be allowed to sign the agreement. Boris Yeltsin gave an interview to the magazine Spiegel in which he stated that he sees no perspective for becoming president of Russia for such activists as Rudskoy or Zhirinovsky. At the same time, he admitted that he's concerned with a possible vacuum of leadership. Now, I'm already beginning to seek candidates who are capable of seriously contending in 1996 for the post of president, he said. But this is a difficult matter. People must get used to the person and begin to trust him, said Boris Yeltsin. Today in Moscow, talks were held of the heads of governments of Russia and Israel. The first day of talks of Yitzhak Rabin in the capital of Russia, which is the co-sponsor of Middle East regularization, gave a basis for optimistic predictions regarding the perspectives in relations between Moscow and Tel Aviv. As of today, toward their development will be 6 two-sided documents regarding cooperation in the areas of science, agricultural production, medicine, and education, and also the signing of a trade economic accord, the absence of which is noted by both countries is not excluded. In Moscow, Yitzhak Rabin was assured that Russia's position on Middle East regularization remains unchanged, and our side is prepared to more actively cooperate in the progress of Israeli-Palestinian talks. The position of Russia and the government and the president of Russia here is unilateral, and the goal can be resolved by only a peaceful path and cease all confrontations, especially armed confrontations. Regarding the concern of Israelis, regarding the threat of the growth of anti-Semitism in our country, Viktor Chernomyrdin stated, in Russia there was never a fertile basis for this, and no Zhirinovskys will be able to create it. As a whole, today's Russian-Israeli talks demonstrated the readiness of both sides to broaden two-sided contacts. After the meeting of Yitzhak Rabin with the chairman of the chambers of the Federal Assembly, Vladimir Shumeyko and Ivan Rybkin, in the near future one may expect closer contact between the parliaments of our countries. Obviously, Moscow and Tel Aviv feel natural the process of strengthening cooperation, considering the fact that in Russia there is a significant number of Jews and in Israel many immigrants from Russia. To say that in Israel you don't need to know Hebrew, everyone understands Russian anyway, is an exaggeration, but there is a grain of truth here. Russian is often heard in the streets, and it's understandable. Annually, on an average, 50,000 immigrants enter from the countries of the former USSR. But to become acclimatized and find a job is difficult. Remember, Vysotsky said, there is no way to become a dentist because of competition, and how will you find enough teeth for all dentists? That could mean unemployment. But it's worse for engineers, specialists in oil refinery, because there's no oil. And bridge builders, they could find a spot here, but all the bridges that were needed have already been built. In any country, it is difficult for everyone without a profession. But if you speak about a brain drain, then the highest demand here is for biologists. This was told to us by Edward Nikolaevich Trifonov, himself a biologist, and apart from his Weizmann Institute post, he's created a computer data bank for new immigrants to help them become acclimatized in their new place. In all immigrations, always, and in Israel especially, only approximately 20 or 30% perhaps of the new immigration will enter into their own social strata. And this is possibly just only for the older generation. In the Jerusalem University, we acquainted ourselves with a new type of immigrants, young people who leave after completing school alone. They have no regrets. They're confident they'll quickly find work. And you can't figure out whether he's brave before the camera or whether it's true. For the young, the road ahead is always open. In the opinion of the Israeli Russian-speaking press, Russia has ceased being a zone of property for Jews. The number of victims in the fire in the commuter bus, which happened on Sunday on the territory of Ingushetia, has risen to 35. 31 people died in the fire on site, and 4 died later in hospital of the populated point Slipsovskaya. This was stated to Interfax by the hospital physicians. In the bus, there were 63 people. 3 women of the 11 who were injured and were taken to the Vladikavkaz hospital are in intensive care. The government of Russia expressed deep condolences to the families of the injured and casualties. The Federal Service of Counterintelligence of Russia is preparing a project of the decree of the president, which will define the security zone along the existing administrative border between Northern Ossetia and Ingushetia. This was stated today to Interfax by the Director of Federal Services of Counterintelligence, Sergei Stepashin. He noted that after his return from the zone of the Ossetian and Ingushetian conflict, Boris Yeltsin was given a report on the situation in the region. According to Sergei Stepashin, the president approved approved the definition and broadening of border-adjacent territories, including on the territory of Ingushetia, where a state of emergency is being declared. The Director of the Federal Services of Counterintelligence stated the project of the decree provides for an additional declaration of state of emergency in 7 more populated points. The current question was coordinated with the leaders of both North Caucasus republics. The dialogues on the regularization of relations between Russia and Chechnya will probably begin after the May celebrations. This was stated today to a correspondent of Vytautas by the Vice President of the government, the head of the Russian delegation at the talks, Sergei Shahraev. According to him, the delegation of Russia has the necessary authority and has worked out its position and is prepared to begin its work. A question was posed on the visit of the President of Russia, Boris Yeltsin, to Ukraine, during which there will probably sign a large-scale agreement between the two countries. This was stated today at a press conference in the Ministry of Defense by the Russian Federation, the special envoy, Yuri Dubinin. As Yuri Dubinin said to Vytautas, the agreement was reached on this during the meeting of Boris Yeltsin with Leonid Kravchuk on the 15th of April in Moscow. The precise time of the visit is not yet specified, said the diplomat. Today, the Minister of Defense of Russia, Pavel Gorbachev, at a press conference on the results of the dialogues on the gradual regularization of the problem of the Black Sea Fleet, called the position of the Ukrainian military delegation unconstructive. From his explanation, quoting military naval bylaws, he says the coastal installations, which are inventory of the fleet, are part of it and therefore enter as objects of discussions, while the Ukrainian side insisted that all this property automatically belonged to Ukraine since it was on its territory. Regarding other demands of the Ukrainian delegation, Gorbachev called them unacceptable and even discriminatory against Russia. Especially unfulfillable, according to the Russian Minister of Defense, is the demand that the entire Russian Black Sea Fleet would be concentrated on one base in Dunoslav. First of all, this contradicts military security. Secondly, Dunoslav is absolutely non-conducive to situate even one unit of the officers of the fleet. Participants in the talks, the representative of the President of Russia, Yuri Dubinin, praised the Russian military delegation for diplomatic art, which it demonstrated, despite the fact which the talks gave only a negative result. The President of Crimea, Yuri Mishkov, categorically refuted in an interview to Vytautas the statement of Leonid Kravchuk that Crimea intends to separate from Ukraine. Yuri Mishkov explained that the Ukrainian Minister of Defense, Vitaly Radetzky, by his refusal to allow the President of Crimea to participate in the Russian-Ukrainian talks on the status of the Black Sea Fleet, which were held last week, himself excluded the Republic of Crimea from the framework of Ukraine. In Moscow, with an official visit, is the parliamentary delegation of the Supreme Soviet of Azerbaijan, headed by its chairman, Rasul Guleyev. Today, the delegation was hosted by Andrei Kozyrev. The Russian plan for Karabakh regularization is realistic to the maximum, and a balanced approach is the only suggestion. This was stated by Andrei Kozyrev during a conversation with the Speaker of Azerbaijani Parliament, Rasul Guleyev. The Russian minister feels that Karabakh is our common ailment and proposes honest partnership together with the Conference on European Security and Cooperation and the UN. Andrei Kozyrev is convinced that in the capacity of peacekeeping forces in Karabakh must be CIS forces, since other countries simply are not capable of fulfilling the missions. If an incident occurs, will not signify a Russian military presence, but a peacekeeping act. The chairman of the Azerbaijani parliament highly appraised the efforts of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs in regularizing the Karabakh crisis. He emphasized that both countries are connected, first of all, by economic interests, and so 95% of the imports of Azerbaijan from the former USSR republics are Russian products. And the same level of Azerbaijani exports to the CIS countries is shared by Russia. Rasul Guleyev expressed a striving of his country to deepen cooperation, but the main condition of success, he feels, is to cease war. Arriving today in Khabarovsk is the commander of the Russian border troops, Andrei Nikolaev, who's conducting an inspection tour along the Far East, visited several portions of the Russian-Chinese border. In connection with the imminent signing of the agreement on the regime of the Russian-Chinese border, Andrei Nikolaev discussed with the heads of the regional administrations questions of border contacts. A production meeting is a serious thing, especially if it's a general meeting of 4.5 million shareholders. Such a large Russian company as the First Voucher Fund. And not far is the 1st of June, the end of the voucher privatization in Russia. In the Moscow sports building, the Olympian gathered people of various incomes, life experience, and education, and all of them, the share funders, wish to be masters of their own future. Some on this thorny path have already been burned. For example, the Auctioneer Society society, technical progress, and desire to immediately receive small but sure dividends. Other pragmatic shareholders feel differently. First, one must build a profitable basis for the fund. We never promised large percentages on dividends. We only had promised that we would work honestly and openly, and so openly that it would be clear from whence the money comes. In the general meeting of the first voucher trust, shareholders saw that the market economy is a strict thing in order to survive tomorrow and reliably receive good profit. Today, the funds must invest in profitable companies, hotels, banks, pension funds, and other promising projects. According to ITARTAS, statistics received from the Moscow City Statistics Bureau, by the end of the first quarter, the condition of the minimal food index of Muscovites was 49,000. It includes bread, potatoes, sugar, eggs, butters, vegetable and dairy, beef, sausages, sour cream, cheese, milk, potatoes, fresh cabbage, onion, apples, and cigarettes. For comparison, throughout Russia as a whole, this index is 46,000 rubles. According to prices on the variety of goods, as the 1st of April, Moscow was in 39th place among 132 cities of the city, behind regions of the extreme north, the far east, and several Siberian cities. Life before and life after differs by quality. Before 1992, empty shelves and unbelievable long lineups. Afterwards, rivers of milk and honey. Essentially, this is the main trump card of the supporters of the current model of transition to a market. It would seem everything is all correct, but such an abundance drowns alarm like a narcotic. Look, there are no Russian brand names on the shelves. The shelves are full, but we ourselves have stopped producing. For the majority of domestic entrepreneurs, it is more lucrative to manipulate money in purchases and sales. Therefore, there's a decline in productivity, which has reached 60%. It's a mistaken opinion that today to produce is not feasible. With such a vacuum on the Russian market, one may produce everything from clothing to footwear and, of course, technology for bread production, mini bakeries, which we produce today. It's very lucrative. Scientific production firm Tokos, from its first day, decided to build equipment for agricultural industry. A special place in its products are mini bakeries. According to specialists in the country, there are 8,000 bread plants, which cannot satisfy the population not only with fresh, but any kind of bread. Therefore, if the entire world today sells and buys 70,000 mini bakeries, the demand of Russia alone is 60,000. So you see, the market is provided for. And I would say a qualitative market lineup for hot bread is proof of this. All the equipment is created together with the conversional and automobile manufacturing plants. Such cooperation helps the plants to preserve their employees and also to earn. In this sector, there is the highest turnover which one can achieve and maximum return for the developers, for the workers, and naturally for the consumers as well. The headquarters of information and press of the Ministry of Defense of Russia today announced to our television agency that on the Ministry of Defense's insistence, the government of Russia has located means to liquidate a significant part of government debts to companies of military sectors and industry. This money is already entering accounts of 700 large and average-sized companies participating in fulfilling the defense order for 1994. In the financial center of Germany, the Frankfurt on Main, the third, after Switzerland and Cyprus, foreign point of the leading commercial bank of Russia, Income Bank, opened. On this occasion, bankers conducted a solid and serious presentation. In the auditorium, those who define the business rhythm of the economy of Germany, financiers, entrepreneurs, Income Bank has a difficult task to make its financial institute more attractive and reliable for those who, for now, prefer to keep billions of dollars on Western accounts. The report of the president of Income Bank was quite dry, but for specialists, figures are the most important. Vladimir Vinogradov juggled millions, billions, and trillions in hard currency and rubles. One of the forerunners of the reconstruction of state bank monopoly, Income Bank, in 5.5 years not only took second place after Sberbank by the number of private deposits, but actually helps to stay afloat on the waves of the market for 25,000 companies. Example, the Orsk-Halitsus metallurgical plant. Warm words and congratulations at the presentation of Representative Tashprom Export, Mashino Import, Rosnefty Impex, the Russian Embassy, and even Central Bank. Germans, for example, their Vice President of Commerce Bank, Wilhelm Muse, feel the presentation was conducted professionally. Many in the Federal Republic were surprised at the new the Russian bank system. And Income Bank attracts experienced personnel, people who works from Frankfurt in the state structures. The mayor of Frankfurt, the Burgermeister, in his welcome speech, welcomed the representatives of Income Bank to try to become the branch as soon as possible, which would correspond to the plans of Vladimir Groshov and Vinogradov, heads of the flourishing collective, an average age of which is 30 years old, and have still much ahead of them. We continue our broadcast. The employees of the Sochi division of the Federal Service of Counterintelligence from the resident of Ural on the 20th and 23rd of April confiscated more than 7 kilometers of radioactive substance, supposedly uranium-237. Ichotas says criminal charges have been filed. Official statistics confirm that the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Russia is managing to curb crime growth at the red mark somewhere. However, daily reality leaves room for doubt. And the higher echelons of the Ministry of Internal Affairs feels that technical capabilities in dealing with crime, especially organized crime and simple local crime, impose limitations on militia. Yet today, the Moscow exhibit of police technology, which opened today, shows that Russia is capable of making everything which is necessary for operations employees, from silent weapons and surveillance equipment to high-class individual means of self-defense. A Russian paradox: the most powerful aviation industry in the world has not yet developed special helicopters, which is indispensable for all Western police. 70 Russian companies from the defense sector and the same number of Western companies at this exhibit began a ruthless battle for the boundless Russian market. Enormous, without exaggeration, interest was evoked by the exhibit of computer technology in Moscow and Krasnopresno, which opened today, Contact 94. It is being held for the 5th time and is the 3rd in the world in its representativeness and significance. This time, participating in it are 150 firms and companies from more than 15 countries of the world. Among them are such major computer producers as IBM, Apple, Compaq, Hewlett-Packard, whose goods are presented not only on their own displays, but also in displays of Russian companies. The Russian consumer has withstood his right to all the best which is on the market of computer technologies. And the best is what is the leading companies of Russia are offering, presented at the exhibit. During the last decades in Russia, there has been a turbulent process of computerization. And if recently it was regarded as a miracle, today the computer became an inexorable part of life, and not by coincidence. There's a significant number of increases in investment from Western firms into Russian companies and other CIS countries in the computer sector. Therefore, our domestic users of computer technology have a choice of products. The first official delegation of the Russian State Duma in the Republic of the former Yugoslavia for the 4th day continues its acquaintance with the details of the Balkan tragedy. After a series of meetings in the Yugoslavian capital on the weekend, the deputies visited Pali and Sarajevo, where they consulted with leadership of Bosnian Serbs and Sarajevo Muslims. In the Serbian part of Sarajevo, Srebrenica, they visited the battalion of Russian paratroopers. Today, the parliamentarians saw Yugoslavian Stalingrad, Vukovar, and Klisa, the main base of the Russian contingent of Blue Berets. According to the proposal made by the President of the Russian Federation, Boris Nikolaevich Yeltsin, we feel that it must be developed quickly. We're speaking about holding a conference with participants from Russia, the United States, the United Nations, the European Union, and with the participation of the warring sides in order to quickly sit at the dialogue tables and by peaceful means resolve all contradictions. Today, part of the Russian delegation, the special UN plane, flew to the capital, Croatia, Zagreb. Tomorrow, Russian deputies should be hosted by the President of Serbia, Slobodan Milosevic. The results of the reconnaissance flights of the NATO aviation over Gorazde bring a multitude of evidence of facts that the withdrawal of Bosnian Serb forces continues, said the commander of UN forces in Bosnia-Herzegovina, General Rose. He, with certain confidence, predicted that given the current tempos of withdrawal, these forces will be beyond the 20-kilometer band zone from the city, which were set by the NATO-UN time limit next Wednesday. A supplementary contingent of UN, consisting of 247 soldiers and officers, arrived and began fulfilling their mission in Gorazde. And now in the region there are almost 400 Blue Berets, among which there are 20 Russian military servicemen. Despite the fact that the NATO ultimatum to the Bosnian Serbs has expired and the situation around Gorazde, according to reports, is gradually returning to normal, the need for the meeting of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Russia, Andrei Kozyrev, with Secretary of State of the United States, Warren Christopher, has not subsided. It's expected expected it will be on Tuesday evening in Geneva. This was stated to Interfax by a high-placed official of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Today, the new Prime Minister of Japan, elected in Parliament, was Tsutomu Hata, an experienced politician with a good character. This is the reputation of this 58-year-old man. His main talent, according to observers, is the ability to tactically coordinate collective work, which is significant for a person who will head the colorful multi-party coalition cabinet. Hato is a politician by descent. His father was often elected to Parliament. The new Prime Minister is married, has two sons. One of them is doing his master's degree in the United States. The personal wealth of the Hatos is assessed at 410 million yen, so more than $3.5 million. Completely unexpected in Japan was the announcement today of the creation of a new association of political parties called Kaisin, which means transformation, which could lead to a schism in the ruling coalition. Changes in the political situation a few hours after the parliament elected Tsutomu Hato as the only candidate from the ruling coalition for the post of prime minister is delaying the creation of government. However, until now, it is not known will there actually be a schism. This will be clarified, obviously, after the session of the higher leaders of the 7 parties of the ruling coalition this evening. 2 powerful explosions today shook residential quarters of Johannesburg. Victims of identified terrorists are 7 people, and more than 50 people were injured. And so during the last 2 days, from 3 bomb explosions, 16 South Africans died, and more than 140 were taken to hospital. In the meanwhile, the pre-election campaign in South Africa is approaching its end. This evening, according to the law on elections, mass meetings will be banned, and the majority of political organizations, however, have completed their propaganda activities the last weekend. Tomorrow, the into electoral urns, ballots will be deposited, and the first historical general non-racial elections will begin. For 1 month in France, this historical court case continued on Paul Tourier, who during the years of occupation was the head of the intelligence of Leon militia, the quasi-military formation of the fascist collaborationary regime of Vichy. Half a century later, the 79-year-old man, with the help of certain protégés, was able to avoid judicial proceedings, which yet sat him on the defendant's bench in the Versailles court. The first among the French, he was charged with involvement in crimes against humanity during the Second World War. Then, in 1944, according to his order in Lyon, 7 Jewish hostages were executed. For an entire month, the defendant and his defense attempted to expiate actions of the collaborationists in the military situation by pressure of Hitler, Nazis, and even absolve him for deeds, because since the crime 50 years have already passed. But many hours-long brilliant conclusive speeches of his attorneys could not soften the journey and influence the judge. On all questions in accusation, only one response was given: guilty. Tourier received the highest measure of punishment in France, life imprisonment for involvement in crimes against humanity. The verdict of the Versailles court was heard not only as harsh, but as a just verdict, and as a reminder that even though the past has long ago subsided into history, is not forgotten, and for criminal actions, one will have to answer sooner or later. Today in Tashkent, on a 3-day visit, arrived the President of France, François Mitterrand, and today was the first round of talks between him and the President of Uzbekistan, Islam Karimov. To the capital of Kazakhstan, Almaty, arrived with an official visit the Premier of the State Council of China, Li Pian. He will speak with the President and the government of Kazakhstan and sign 2-sided documents. Soon it will be 1 month since in Estonia disconnected were broadcasts of the television company Ostankino, and yet the 400,000 Russian-speaking population of Estonia are left without the last source of information from their ethnic homeland. The broadcasting of Russian and Petersburg television and also Radio Mayak ended 1 year ago. And now, in the Republican press, more frequently published are letters of television viewers with requests to renew Ostankino broadcasts. Moscow television was very popular among even the Estonian-speaking viewers. In the Republic, already was created a private television corporation which is prepared to take on all expenses and renew broadcasting, first of all, at least the news of Ostankino. For now, the matter is with the Department of Language of the Republic, which feels that the broadcasts must be translated into Estonian. However, even lay people understand that to supply the news program with subtitles and translations would be absolutely impossible. With the hope that the problem will be resolved positively, I say goodbye to you, and in one moment, the broadcast will be continued by sports. Goodbye.
Очень интересная газета. Спинцов. Недорогая подписка в любом отделении связи.
Система телемаркет – это десятки тысяч заявок от продавцов и покупателей товара. Для каждого система телемаркет автоматически подберет наиболее выгодного партнера.
Система телемаркет.
Акции АО МММ свободно продаются и покупаются во всех пунктах распространения акций АО МММ. Дни котировок акций каждый вторник и четверг. Предполагаемый еженедельный рост стоимости акций не менее 400 рублей. В отличие от любой другой ценной бумаги, акции АО МММ абсолютно ликвидные. То есть вы можете свободно продать их в любом пункте распространения акций АО МММ, причем по цене значительно выше той, которую вы за нее платили. Никаких ограничений по срокам покупки и по количеству акций не предусматривается.
Victory echo of Olympic Lillehammer is still heard in Moscow today in the Kremlin. The Olympic award ceremony was held. The title, the Hero of Russia, was bestowed on the heroine of the two Olympic Games, Alberta Lillehammer. The skier, Lyubov Yegorova. Boris Yeltsin gave out the award. We'll congratulate our Olympians with their awards, among them the champion of the Paralympic Games in Norway, the alpine skier, Alexei Moshkin from Kienbaba. This 19-year-old athlete became a victim of a gang attack en route from home to Moscow, where he flew to the award ceremony radio station Moscow. Alexei, who's a paraplegic, won the gold in Norway, and the attackers, together with Alexei's personal articles, stole his gold Olympic medal. Among the main athletic events, the opening of the World Hockey Championship in Italy. The tournament will be held on the rinks of Balsam, Valdifasa, and Milan. The Russian hockey team will meet with tomorrow with the English team, and Russia is a basic candidate for the championship together with Canada and Sweden. However, Norway put under doubt its chances of Olympic championship. The Olympic Championship Swedes for victory in the World Championship. Details on our first day tournament in our journal at 1 o'clock in the morning, if you're not sleeping. Now, you can see the Swedes having the undisputed lead in the mastery in class. They should have won. They led with a score of 2-0. However, 11 seconds before the final siren, Espen Knudsen, with a strong hit into the goal of the Swedes, evened out the score 3-3. In the match of the teams, Finland and the Czech Republic, any side could have been a winner. The teams were equal in strength. However, the score was 4-4. The Canadians beat the Italians 4-1. The New York Rangers and the Stars of Dallas are the first in the second tour of the series playoffs for the Stanley Cups. The New Yorkers are playing, aided by the actions of Alexei Kovalov, Sergei Zubov, Sergei Nemchinov, won against the New York Islanders 5-2. Dallas beat St. Louis Bruins 2-1. Semi-final competitions for the Cup of Russia was decided. The 6th of May, Moscow Spartak against Moscow Dynamo, and the Army team will meet the soccer team of Vladikavkaz. An entire constellation of champions and a record number of participants, 217 countries, will compete in Moscow, the Golden Bear tournament. The culmination is the arm wrestling. The 8-time American champion John Barzenka and Georgian Zola Katadze. That American technician from Delta Airline won as a reward a brick miniature factory. Will John open a new business or will he take the prize in money, $4,500?
Тверь Универсал-банк приглашает отраслевые министерства, областные администрации и финансовые компании к реализации программы безналичных расчетов с внедрением банковских векселей «Тверь Универсал-банка». Основная цель программы – разрешение кризиса неплатежей. Контактные телефоны в Москве 292 47 00, 274 03 56, 274 03 11, 330 45 62. Тверь Универсал-банк.
пенсионный фонд. Твоя уверенность в завтрашнем дне.
В отличие от любой другой ценной бумаги, акции АО МММ абсолютно ликвидны. То есть вы можете свободно продать их в любом пункте распространения акций АО МММ, причем по цене значительно выше той, которую вы за нее платили. Никаких ограничений по срокам покупки и по количеству акций не предусматривается.
Игорь и Юля. Неужели опять спорят? Послушаем, о чем они говорят.
Юля, может быть, не надо?
Купим на всем.
Надо, Игорь, надо. АО МММ. Марина Сергеевна, здравствуйте. Куда же вы так спешите?
Проверю еще раз. Вложу теперь 300 тысяч.
Поверила. АО МММ.
Good evening. Information about the weather from the Oceanic Meteorological Center of Russia. To change the cloudy, rainy weather, which during the last few days was in the Kursk Peninsula and Arkhangels. Now there is sun, the rains have stopped. The cyclone, which defined the weather of the North European territory of Russia, is moving toward West Siberia. In exchange for it, an area of high pressure is spreading with the center over the Arkhangels district. Therefore, tomorrow, expected here is partly cloudy with some brief winds. Although at night it will be cool from 0 to -3 during the day, it will be up to +8 to 13. Its central and central Chernozem areas will be under the influence of an area of low pressure. Here it will be cloudy with rain at night, +5, +8 during the day, 15 to 20 degrees. In the Baltic countries, cloudy with rains. During the day, 13 to 18 degrees. And the weather will remain the same mostly in Belarusia and Ukraine, where in a zone of atmospheric fronts it will be rainy. The temperatures during the day 11 to 16 above zero. In Moldova it is warmer up to +20 degrees. On the Don and on the lower Volga it will remain cloudy with rains and thunderstorms. In the morning fog is possible. Here it is warm. During the day 20 to 25 degrees. Torrential rains will pass over the Krasnodarsk and Stavropolsk areas. Temperatures during the day +20 degrees. On the Black Sea coast rains with thunderstorms. In the area of Sochi the temperature is 16 to 18 degrees. In Georgia and Armenia, cloudy torrential rains. At night, 8 to 13. During the day, 23 to 28 degrees. In Azerbaijan, it is sunny and warm. During the day, 25 to 30 degrees. In Petersburg tomorrow, it will be partly cloudy. The probability of rain is quite low. At night, 5 to 7 degrees. During the day, 16 to 18 degrees. In Moscow, cloudiness will prevail and possibly brief periods of rain. The winds are from the east. The temperatures at night +6 to 8. During the day, 14 to 16 degrees. I thank you for your attention. All the best.